give you a little background first on why we decided to do a fundraising webinar series. So first, we're hoping to create more digital content to reach entrepreneurs where they're at. So we love our conference and our in-person events, but we recognize it's not always possible to get to New York City or San Francisco as a founder. So we've decided to come to you. Secondly, I want to give you the reason about why we decided to do a fundraising webinar series specifically. So first, we're hoping to create more digital content to reach entrepreneurs, but we also decided to do fundraising because historically it's been really difficult for Black women in tech to raise money. We're raising just 3% of the dollars raised by the average tech company, putting our total median raise effectively at $0 because the majority of women have raised absolutely nothing. This is a stat we've seen play out time and time again with the founders who are members of Black Women Talk Tech, despite having incredible high potential companies. So we decided to focus our first webinar series on just that, equipping founders with all the information they need to go out and raise. And to help us do that today, we're really lucky to have Bianca from Republic to present on how to raise money through equity crowdfunding. So a little background on her. Bianca is a director of partnerships and business development at Republic, a fintech platform that runs investment campaigns for tech startups and blockchain projects to raise capital from retail investors. Before Republic, she worked on Wall Street for 5 years, including at Credit Suisse, BlackRock, and Atlas Merchant Capital, where she conducted business in Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. Bianca also established a consultancy, Tano Capital, where she worked with various entities on new fund infrastructure and strategy, business development, as well as the tax and economic incentives in Puerto Rico. Through Tano, she advised and launched economic revitalization projects in real estate, medical cannabis, and entrepreneurship accelerator space. She's a mentor for the Stanford Latino Entrepreneur Leaders Program and a member of both the World Economic Forum Global Shapers and Milken Institute Leaders Circle. Bianca earned an MBA from Columbia Business School and BA from Harvard College. So again, we're really excited to have her present. And before I hand it over to her, just a few housekeeping items. So first, your mics will be muted, but if you have a question that you want to ask, please put it in the Q&A chat and I'll moderate. Just to let you know, we also have about 15 minutes at the end for questions. So I would suggest just waiting to see if your question is answered and then asking it then. And then second, to answer probably the biggest question up front, yes, you will be getting the recording of this webinar afterwards in an email, so look out for that. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Bianca.
Fantastic, thanks, Lauren. Can you hear me? Awesome. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so I'm going to kick it off by introducing Republic a little bit. So we're going to talk about fundraising through equity crowdfunding. And so about Republic, we're an investment platform where startups and blockchain projects can raise capital from retail investors. We spun out of AngelList in 2016. And so I'll talk a little bit more later on in the presentation about what the regulation that was passed enabled us to do. But when I say retail investors, I mean all investors, regardless of their wealth or accreditation status, can now invest in startups online. And so Republic is a portal that is giving access to vetted startups for retail investors. Another way to put that is Main Street investors, investors that may have a 401k or may not. But for the first time, these investors can now access investing in startups, which is awesome for founders like yourselves. And I'll talk about why in a little bit. So on Republic, we have highly vetted deal flow, both for traditional startups, as well as blockchain startups. And at the same time, our deal flow looks a little bit different from what you might see out of a traditional Silicon Valley deal flow set or even New York. And the reason why is because we think through democratizing access to capital and sort of beyond geographic boundaries, we're enabling founders from all across the country and world to tap into an opportunity to access capital. And so what that's resulting in is a deal flow set that is inherently more diverse, which we really love. The other thing is on Republic, we are open to startups that may or may not be sort of at the cutting edge of technology, like in traditional Silicon Valley. So for example, we have had e-commerce startups, we've had breweries, sort of consumer packaged goods, more traditional startups be able to access capital through our platform. So that's another big difference between our deal flow and that of traditional Silicon Valley technology. So I want to go into a little bit more as to why we have more diverse deal flow on our platform. So when I started a few months ago, I worked on assessing and taking a look at how we were doing as it related to our mission of democratizing access to capital, resources, information, and also investing. And what we found was that in the 2 years of our existence, about 25% of capital to date had gone to a startup with an underrepresented founder of color, which we define as Black or Latinx. And that was versus less than 1% for the traditional venture capital industry. And then that's versus 29% of the US population that Black and Latinx make up. So we were really happy to see that so far, within 2 years of existing, we were already doing a lot better than the industry as it related to the diversity of our founders. And it's still early days, but we're really proud of that fact. And again, I think Lauren wanted me to talk about why is it that underrepresented founders of color or female founders do better in equity crowdfunding or crowdfunding generally. I'm not sure if it's anything related to sort of an inherent ability to do better, more than it is more related to the fact that as a tech platform, you are sort of democratizing access through technology. And so we've sort of seen and reaped the benefits of that. On the other side, we looked at female founders and we found that 44% of capital on the platform to date had gone to a company with a female founder, which again, we were really excited about. And that was versus 13% for the traditional venture capital industry. And so again, we're doing better than the industry. We have a long way to go, but I think that this is a tool that really has been democratizing access to capital, and we're really proud to be, a premier compliant portal to enable that. So let's go into what is equity crowdfunding. So I'll start on the investor side of things. As I mentioned, 2 years ago, due to a regulation that was added to the Jobs Act, which is Jumpstart Our Business Act, it essentially extended the opportunity to invest in startups to everyday investors, regardless of their accreditation. So it essentially allows startups to access, individuals, It allows individuals to invest as little as $10 in a startup online. And so this regulation was passed by the SEC. And again, it was an addendum to the Jobs Act. It was called Title III, Regulation Crowdfunding. And that's what enabled Republic to exist. And on the startup side of things, private companies, such as the ones you guys are running, can now raise up to $1.07 million through regulation crowdfunding annually. And what that means is they can raise capital from anyone, their friends, their family, their users, their customer base, which I'll go into a little bit more. So where do we sit? Republic really sits at the intersection of investing and marketing. And the reason for that is that sort of running an investment campaign through the Republic essentially allows you to both access capital, but also it allows you to essentially use the campaign as a marketing tool. And so I'll go into detail about how you can do that through an investment campaign with us. But we really sit at the intersection of both. We're both angel investors, retail investors, and we're also digital marketing and PR and branding. As it relates to what you may know traditional crowdfunding to be, such as Kickstarter or Indiegogo, those are really, we view as sort of marketing campaigns. And investors in those get essentially rewards for their investment dollars. And so with Republic, investors get equity for their investment dollars. So again, I'll go into more detail later, but this is a really exciting opportunity. And we view this as a tool, a new tool for founders to essentially be able to raise capital from their user base, their email lists, their networks, etc. But we really want to emphasize that we're not a replacement to venture capital. In fact, we would love for our founders to go on to raise Series B, Series C's, etc. from more institutional investors if they want that opportunity. So we view ourselves as a complement to other fundraising mechanisms, and I'll explain why that is. But the security that we use, which is called the CrowdSafe, or Simple Agreement for Future Equity, which came out of Y Combinator, we've tailored that for the crowd, does not limit other types of securities offerings. So if founders would like to simultaneously raise angel investment or more institutional investment or other forms of capital such as debt, they can absolutely do that alongside their investment campaign with us. So to go into a little bit more detail about what is a CrowdSafe, as I mentioned, it's a simple agreement for future equity that we've tailored for the crowd. So what that means is, similar to a safe, investors in this security that you'll do with Republic if you do a campaign with us will get a valuation cap and discount. It's a promise for future equity. So that is, they're able to convert to future equity when there's a priced round, but at the time that they invest with Republic, it's a promise for future equity. So with the valuation cap, this is typical of a safe or a convertible note. They are allowed essentially a cap at which their investment will convert to equity in the future, which essentially protects them from dilution. So the valuation caps that we see at Republic are around 5 to 7 million. And then the discount is, again, a benefit to investors where they can invest, or rather their equity converts at a discount to the valuation of the future priced round. And we're seeing discounts of around 20% in line with the industry. And then the great thing about the CrowdSafe is it's extendable. So in other words, if you as a founder do not want to essentially convert your investors into the CrowdSafe at the next round, you can extend it until there is a liquidity event such as an IPO or an acquisition. And so what this really means is that all the investors that invest in your business through an equity investment campaign such as Republic will roll up into one line item on your cap table. So if you have 100 investors, you're not going to have 100 line items on your cap table. So not to worry, they'll all roll up into one line item called the CrowdSafe, and you can extend the conversion of those to equity of those investors to equity until there's a liquidity event. So I reviewed extendable, fixed conversion, and the last thing I'll review is limited rights. With the CrowdSafe that we've created, investors do not have information or voting rights. There is one update sort of requirement post-campaign that you have to sort of update your investors. It's one sort of reporting requirement that's mandated by the SEC. But after that, we encourage quarterly updates to your investors, but it's not mandatory. So for example, if you have 100 investors, you won't be asked hundreds of times for information, or you might be, but you don't necessarily have to field those sort of by law. And again, it's encouraged because at the end of the day, these investors could be really amazing brand evangelists and they want to learn what's going on in your business. So we encourage that, but it's not required. Okay, so who backs companies on Republic? So I just want to go into this. I just want to make sure, I'm just going to take one pause to make sure everything's all set. Okay, great. So who backs companies on Republic? 4 categories. They include friends and family of the team, passionate customers or user base of the company, and the growing Republic community of investors, which we have upwards of 70,000 investors in our growing community, and then new supporters for marketing campaigns. So as I mentioned, we really sit at the intersection of financing and marketing. And on the marketing side of things, we work with founders to come up with digital marketing campaigns that will be used in the public phase of their investment campaign to access new supporters. But really, the way it works is you'll start off by tapping into your own network, your own family, your own user base for the first third of your investment campaign. And after you've raised about a third of your investment goal, then you'll open it up to the public, to our user base and to new supporters. So that's really the flow of it. I just want to go quickly into a little bit more of the details about, okay, this all sounds interesting. How do I go about doing this? And what are some more details of how to raise with Republic? So the first step is really applying. When we do vet all startups on our platform, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have about a 10% acceptance rate. And what we're really looking for is 5 key things that we've summarized into the 5 T's. They are team, traction, tech and product, terms, and theme. As it relates to team, we're really looking for the expertise of the founding team, as well as their passion and resilience and ability to lead a team. And so, that kind of is self-explanatory. Happy to answer more questions about that in the Q&A section. As it relates to traction, we're looking for signs of traction, signs of growth that the company is displaying. So for example, if it's a B2C company, we're looking for how big is the user base so far? What is the monthly active users? How often are they returning every month? What is the annual or monthly recurring revenue that's being tapped into at that point in the company? And things along those lines. If it is a B2C company, we're looking at what's the client pipeline? How many clients have signed up so far? What is the, again, annual recurring revenue? And what is the growth month over month? For tech and product, we're looking at things like how innovative is this product? What is the product roadmap? How well thought out is the founder sort of thinking through their plan? What is their vision for the next step? And we're also looking at things like how innovative is this product? Is it 10 times better than competitors? Are consumers or clients going to want this product? Signs of product market fit. And the last thing, or the second to last thing, are terms, which include things like what is the valuation that you're proposing? If it's higher than that average that we're seeing of 5 to 7 million at the level that we're at the stage that we're seeing for most companies, why is it higher? And other things include what is the runway of the company? So I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but it takes about 2 months on average to run an investment campaign with us. So if a founder comes to us and says, I have 1 month of runway left, it doesn't necessarily mean that the company is a bad company. There are many reasons why a founder could only have 1 month of runway left. Having said that, we really need the founder to have at least 3 to 6 months of runway to be able to sustain the campaign and for us to be comfortable with their ability to do that. And so so runway is really critically important for us. And the last thing I'll say is theme, which really speaks to the values of Republic. We care tremendously about the diversity of the founding team and of their team as well. We also care about things like, is this startup positively impacting the world beyond making a profit? What is the social impact? So those are things that we look at as well. And then a few quick hits. What are our fees? So we take a 6% cash commission on the total amount raised during the campaign and a 2% securities commission. So as I mentioned, we use this crowd safe. And so if you had raised $1 million on Republic, we would take $20,000 in the form of equity via the valuation of your crowd safe, as if we had invested that much. The last couple things are preparation. So I'll go into this in a little bit more detail next, but one of the requirements to do an equity crowdfunding round is to file what's called a Form C with the SEC. As I mentioned, Republic sort of was born out of this regulation passed a couple years ago. And so we are SEC registered and FINRA licensed. And so every founder that raises with us will need to essentially file a Form C, which is essentially registering with the SEC. So you will get assigned what's called a SIC code, which is more or less a ticker. It's sort of a mini IPO, what you're doing in terms of offering securities to the public. So you'll get, a SIC code. You'll also be required to provide high-level financials in GAAP format to the SEC for your Form C. And this is something that we can certainly help with in terms of getting your financials into GAAP financials. We have outsourced partners that we work with to do that, and we will help you along the way in executing that. And again, when I say high-level financials, this is a snapshot of your financials at a certain given time that you're running the campaign. If you don't have a long history of financials, most startups don't, that's okay. And again, it is a high-level snapshot. So if you, went out to dinner with a client or a potential customer, we're not going to know that. It's more of a high-level snapshot of your business and the health of your business at that point in time. And then it's really, let's see. So the other things that we really do is we'll work with you. Our marketing team, our deal team will work with you to put together your pitch page and finalize your video, things along those lines. And the other thing is really execution, right? We understand founders have a lot going on at any given time. And as I mentioned, the Republic campaign takes about 2 months on average. Having said that, I think, it's a lot of work for those 2 months, but it's an incredible opportunity, and you're kind of killing two birds with one stone in terms of getting capital and marketing and building your brand via the campaign. So we think it's really worth the execution that it takes, and founders have given us great feedback along those lines. And we're really with you every step of the way with all of our founders. working with them to make sure the campaign is going well and executing their digital marketing strategies, etc. So I wanted to provide a quick timeline for what a sample Republic campaign will look like. I went through a couple of the preparation aspects of it, which take about 3 to 6 weeks before you launch. And those include things like segmenting your contact list. So as I mentioned, you will have a private phase of your campaign, which I'll go through in a second. And we encourage you to take a look at all your contacts and start to segment them by how much money you think you can get from them, and get really organized along those lines. Also, the other thing that you can do is finalizing some of your email messaging that's going to go out to your contacts and your users, your email lists, and creating your video, your pitch deck, your deal page, etc. The other thing is we encourage is to put together a PR and marketing budget. How much do you want to spend on digital marketing? And that can be anywhere from, $0 to $10,000+ that you want to spend. It really is founder specific. And the other thing that this sort of portion of the campaign is really organizing your financials and filing that Form C. Then you'll launch your campaign. And then, as I mentioned, it is a private phase, which takes around a month. And that is reaching out to friends and family, reaching out to your customers, your user base, your email lists, your professional network, and then refining messaging. What is working, what's not working, and really building momentum up through and to your public phase, the public phase of your campaign. So then you'll launch the public phase of your campaign. And really what that is at that point you will have strategized. It's really executing on your digital marketing across all channels, email lists, SEO, social media, influencers, etc. And maybe even enlisting the help of a PR firm or any contacts you have in the press to get an article or two out about your investment campaign to really spread the word and get those new supporters. Then you'll close your campaign successfully, we hope. And we actually have a very high success rate, I think 95% success rate. And you'll close your campaign, and then there'll be a couple of reporting requirements. I mentioned one reporting requirement about 6 months after your campaign closes that you'll send out to your investors, and then it's really quarterly updates thereafter at your discretion. All right, so time to kind of shed a little more light about this by bringing it to life with a real life startup that has raised on our campaign. So please meet Fatima Diko. She was a founder that raised on Republic. Her company is called Jetpack. And what Jetpack did was to essentially, it was an on-demand service focused on students, college students and all students on college campuses across the country, that essentially enabled them to get access to things that they needed, physical goods, that they needed on demand. So whether they were around campus, they needed access to a toothbrush, deodorant, snacks. Jetpack enabled them to do that. And Fatima raised almost $250,000. That was 500% of her initial goal. So wildly successful campaign. And she gained 800 plus new investors from across the country and beyond her immediate network, that's within her immediate network and across the country, the majority of which were students. So users of her actual product. And what I love about this story, I have had the pleasure of meeting Fatima in person for one of our events here in San Francisco, and also featured her in our diversity report. She told me this great story of how she went to Sand Hill Road to essentially raise money. And, a lot of investors sort of said to themselves, well, I don't really quite understand the product. Is there going to be a demand for this? We're not quite sure about this. She ended up running a campaign on Republic because she had, had really good traction as it related to her product and user base. So she raised on Republic, and she reached 250K, and she was able to go back to those same investors and say, hey, take a look at my campaign. The majority of my investors were actually students, which actually was an incredible product market fit data point for those same investors to say, okay, this shows there's demand out there if all of these students are investing in her business. And so she was able to raise an additional $750K to complete her round from those same investors after her Republic campaign. And I think what that shows you is the campaign is incredibly valuable for many reasons, one of which is it provides interesting data points for you to present to other investors on why you actually do have product market fit and how you're able to establish that through your investor base. And finally, I'm going to end with a video. So just to shed light on what a video looks like on our website. And then I can go into more questions or more answers rather in the Q&A as to the details around creating a video. But what I will say is this video was created by Martha Hernandez, another founder on our platform. She is a Latina from Oakland who had a very successful campaign as well on Republic. Her company is called Made Boss. And I'll show you the quality of her video. And she created this with about a $2,500 budget. All right, give me 1 second, please.
I learned at an early age that opportunity comes to those that prepare for it. Although my story helped me gain access to great schools and connection with amazing mentors, I also found that opportunity can be biased. Talented young adults are forced to survival jobs, making breaking down generational poverty impossible. My name is Marta Hernandez, and I am the founder and CEO of Made Boss, a mobile app that supports users in driving and proactively managing their career success through an individualized plan. Made Boss is changing lives. Let me show you how it works. Meet Naomi. Naomi used the Made Boss app to take the talent and passion assessment, where she learned that her analytical and problem-solving skills were a great fit for a career in programming. Made Boss helped Naomi learn about job market demand, cost, and compensation for best fit careers. Most importantly, the application also individualized the plan for her to take action and triggered potential influencers and employers. Like Naomi, all Made Boss users now have the tools to work towards their dreams regardless of where they're at in their career. They followed the Made Boss plan and worked to make it become a reality. Prior to Made Boss, I've personally and manually supported hundreds of people in getting a better career and better salary. What's really exciting about Made Boss is that it adds a layer of transparency to the process. And for the first time, talent will be able to see from the start what it is that they need to do to get the job or the promotion. While at the same time, employers will be able to make the right talent investment. I want people around the world to have the tools to take charge of their careers. Help us make Made Boss vision come alive. Invest in Made Boss and join our mission in giving everyone a chance of a more fulfilling and more sustainable career. Thank you.
All right, and with that, I'm going to open it up to any Q&A. So I'll kick it over to Lauren to go ahead and get that going.
Okay, thank you so much, Bianca. That was really great, incredibly informative. We're so lucky to have you here, as we mentioned, to go through that whole process. So we'll now open it up to questions. And while everyone's getting their questions together, just a reminder, put it right there in the Q&A or in the chat as well. I'll see them both. And while we're waiting for those, I'll kick it off with a question of my own. So I think that video was incredible. It was really well done. You said they got it made themselves. Can you explain a little bit about that creative process? Is that something that Republic helps with, or how do you suggest people go about creating videos that are really effective on Republic?
Yes, that's a great question. So I think as it relates to the founders that have raised with us, the bulk of them will do either two things. either they actually already have video created, depending on what their business is like, if they have a B2C, or even if they have B2B and they've had videos created for other purposes, you can certainly leverage that. So we don't require that you create a new video to launch on Republic, but you certainly can. So that's one thing. You can totally leverage an existing video. As it relates to creating a new video for Republic, that's something that we can absolutely help with. We have a dedicated marketing and deal team that will help you along the way. If you have questions on where do I go to create a video that within a certain budget, we have access to many resources and suggested vendors for you to do that. In the case of that particular video, Martha herself, she had a contact in the industry who could create the video for her. She came up with the script and she kind of worked and put it together that way. So you can do it in a very scrappy way and be really creative. And again, we are there for you to help you through that process every step of the way. If you need feedback to say, hey, this is what I want to do, I'm not sure, or this is what I want to say, I'm not sure it will resonate, we can absolutely give you advice on that, tell you what has worked. We can also put you in touch with past issuers, we call them, or founders who have raised with us, like Martha, for example, to be able to get more advice on doing that. And we've seen budgets, range quite a bit in terms of the video, from 2,500 like Martha's all the way up to 25,000, which if you have the budget for that and you want to do that, great. But it can be done. A very high quality video can be done within a very reasonable budget, and we're definitely happy to help with things like the script, with ideas. Absolutely.
That's great. Yeah, I can't imagine it goes all the way up to $25,000. That must be an incredible video. But it sounds like Republic is really good about creating that support for entrepreneurs to get them on the platform. So we do have a couple questions from Regina. She asks, can you talk more about Republic's investor community?
Sure. So, and if Regina has any more specifics, that would be great. But I'll kick it off by saying we have about a 70,000 plus community growing. As part in terms of that's invested in Republic companies, or that is following our work and taking a look at our deals all the time. And I think that this is a really awesome community to tap into. And at that, in terms of tapping into that community, it really is sort of similar to, in terms of a founder, let's say a founder from this community would raise in Republic. The way to look at the Republic community is new supporters. So it's really in that public phase that you would tap into that community. And we can certainly help you, strategize on things, like Facebook, et cetera, with pixels in terms of targeting users of Republic to invest in your campaign. And then also we feature every single company in digital demo days that goes out to our newsletter and our community. So you'll have a chance to get exposure that way. And I think at the end of the day, it's really looking at these as new supporters, new potential supporters, like you would look at new potential supporters across the country and the world. And so targeting them in terms of digital marketing is something that we can help strategize with you on. So I'm not sure if there are specific questions, but I hope that helps, or any follow-ups. Happy to answer those.
Yeah, it looks like she's asking where these investors are coming from. So I think that covers it. That works for you.
I'll just add on one more layer to that, so follow up, which is to say that a lot of these investors are actually coming from other campaigns. So once an investor, once let's say someone has run an investment campaign and they do that private raise. So their sort of community, their personal networks, et cetera, will go through the process of registering on Republic to invest in them. And then we see them invest in about, on average, 2 more companies on Republic. So other campaigns is a way that we grow our community. And then we're also, of course, growing our community organically and through our own digital marketing campaigns. So I hope that helps clarify a little bit.
Okay. Well, we'll see if Regina has any follow-ups there. I think Shakira might have a follow-up to that, but let's go to Ansara. She asks, if you've been planning a public crowdfunding campaign, is it acceptable to reach out to Republic after running the public campaign? And so by public campaign, Ansara, what do you mean? A different campaign outside of Republic? Yeah, on Indiegogo or something. So something that's not crowd equity funding.
And then, so if you were running an Indiegogo campaign or another rewards-based campaign, you're wondering, what was this specific question, sorry?
Can you reach out to Republic after completing that campaign?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We encourage that, actually. We would love to, we don't really see ourselves as competitors to Kickstarter or Indiegogo. We see ourselves as a complementary sort of addition to the fundraising ecosystem. Because as I mentioned, we're both financing through equity and marketing. And so we absolutely encourage those of you who have successfully run a crowdfunding campaign that's rewards-based. We absolutely encourage you to go ahead and apply, or through me or through the website, because actually with that, that's actually a great signal for us, because what it shows is that you as a founder know what it takes to run a crowdfunding campaign. And it's a lot of the same skill sets that you're going to leverage into this equity crowdfunding campaign. And so we absolutely love seeing founders that have had successful campaigns on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, et cetera. And we talk to those folks a lot and say, hey, how can we work together to be the next step into your, for founders after they go through reward-based and perhaps prove product market fit or get their sales going. How do we then partner and be that next step to get equity from that same crowd or for even more investors? The one caveat I would say is that I believe, again, because of with the regulation crowdfunding, you can raise $1.07 million annually through this sort of security. And so if you think about it, you can't run concurrent equity crowdfunding campaigns. So you couldn't, go to one of our competitors and sort of run a concurrent equity crowdfunding campaign. You could do it after, but you have that $1.07 million cap through Reg CF annually. So just keep that in mind. And I'm happy to answer follow-ups on that. I know that was a little complicated.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's see if there's a quick follow-up to that. She says, okay, great. So I think she got it. There is a follow-up question that Anthara had. So are companies more attractive with a fuller team versus solo founder companies looking to establish a team on Republic when being considered for a campaign? It's a great question.
Great question. So on average, we're seeing, founding teams that are around 2, right? Having said that, we have had solo founders raised on Republic. And I think this goes back to what I was alluding to earlier in the presentation, which is this idea that on Republic, we look at things a little bit differently than traditional Silicon Valley. So perhaps in Silicon Valley or, those sort of traditional ways of raising money, they might say, okay, well, solo founder, they prefer to have, co-founders or max 3 founders. We've had, as I mentioned, solo, we've had companies that have had 5 founders. And so we do have a more of a flexible lens in that regard. We've had teams come to us and say, look, this is a passion project. We're all part-time, but we really want to make it work. And then they've raised on Republic and turn it into a full-time thing. So we've seen different situations, and that's why our deal flow is a little bit different from traditional Silicon Valley, because we're open to various situations. And I think, we've seen more companies that have been bootstrapped who want to raise with us because they don't want to go traditional venture capital, the traditional venture capital route. And they would rather raise from, 100+ investors who are going to be their supporters and not necessarily, give up a lot of things like voting rights or control over their companies. And so we're seeing a lot of founders that are actually self-funded or bootstrapped, which is super exciting and very, again, not really like traditional venture capital sort of landscape. So we're really proud of all that. We're willing to take a look. And, while we do, like I mentioned, you see on average 2 persons starting, founding teams, we're happy to look at the solo founders. We're happy to look at the larger founding teams and kind of look at it at a case-by-case basis.
Okay, great. And I think we have one last question. So what is the breakdown of funds from friends and family versus investors versus marketing? You can talk a little bit about that.
That's a great question. And it really varies by campaign and in terms of what the campaign, what the company looks like, and and it varies. It certainly varies. But what I will say is that we actually require that about a third of the total campaign sort of goal is raised in that private round, that private phase, where you will be given real estate on our platform, and it will be in private mode, only available to you and whoever has, your link. And about a third, we ask that about a third of your total campaign goal is raised privately. And the reason is because, as you may know, crowdfunding in general, but also applies to equity crowdfunding, is a momentum play. And so we don't want you to launch with $0 on your page. We want you to launch with a solid amount already having been raised. Now, in that third private round, whether, let's say it's about 25K, that's going to be friends and family, but it's also going to be your email lists. It's going to be your professional networks. It's going to be your current users. That's why we really look at traction along those lines of how many users do you have, because you're going to tap into those users for the campaign. And, it's also going to be things like angels. Let's say you were targeting to raise from angel investors. Traditionally, given the cost of and the legal fees, it's really hard to take in, 5K from 10 angels, let's say. But on Republic, you can do that now. And by the way, those angels don't need to be accredited, right? You can be creative. All of a sudden you have a lot more wiggle room to be creative, to say, let's say you have, a friend from college or from business school who isn't quite yet accredited. You can now say, hey, look, I'm running this campaign. If you want to put in, I would love if you could put in $1,000. And that's all of a sudden incredibly easy through our compliant portal, where we've productized the legal, the compliance, everyone goes into the crowd safe. So it's really easy, standard terms across all investors. So you can get really creative in that private round. And all of a sudden it opens up a lot of interesting opportunity to be creative about how you slice and dice that initial third of your campaign. And then, so I would say that the remaining 2/3 is from sort of our community, new supporters through digital marketing, et cetera, new users that you're acquiring through the campaign, et cetera.
All right, great. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's it for questions that we have. So if you think of any others, or if you have a private question, feel free to reach out to Bianca. You can see her email right there, and also sign up for their newsletter as well. So you're getting all the up-to-date information on Republic. So that will conclude for now. If you want to stay informed with what Black Women Talk Tech is up to as well, sign up for our newsletter. And then we have 2 more webinars coming up for this series, and you can sign up for those on our website. Next up in the series is Samira Salmon, one of our most requested speakers from our conference. And she's doing a follow-up of the presentation she actually gave at our conference on how to pitch your way to $1 million from traditional investors. And as we heard from Bianca, you can start your equity crowdfunding campaign and then roll into a more traditional investment. So it's great to just know your options and know how that process works. They all build on each other. So that's 2 weeks on October 1st. And then on November 6th, we'll have Sean Newsome of ICO Watchdog, who will be teaching us about the all ever elusive ICO campaign, raising money through cryptocurrency. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. A huge, huge thank you to Bianca and to Republic. And I hope to see you all next time.
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.